Hello, hello, it's Pure Draculea, and I know it's been a while since I've been uploading videos, reels, and whatnot. I gotta get back at that. Things have been hectic, but anyways, I did finish a sketchbook, so we're gonna have a little sketchbook tour. And the background fabric is some calf facet quilting cotton that I haven't gotten around into making into a skirt for myself yet, but hey. It's bright and colorful, and we do have some mess because, anyways, I will spare you the details of my technical difficulties this morning. So, this book is just a plain old little gray sketchbook that I got from Myles. Sometimes I paint the covers of these, but this one I was lazy. I just slapped some stickers on it. And will this make it up without smacking the tripod? Oh, no, it did. Boink. Yeah, anyways. So you'll notice it says car sketchbook. No. Delusions, delusions, delusions. The reason why it says car sketchbook is when I go run errands in Victoria with my dad, he likes to stop at a place called Princess Auto and be in there for like 2 hours. Now, not always. Sometimes he's out of there in 45 minutes, but definitely, usually it's an hour. And I get tired of walking around on the concrete floor. So if there's anything I need in there, I grab it, I go back out to the car. So I thought I would have this to sketch in, but it ended up being a class thing. So what we have here is a little print, and can I zoom in on that? Yeah, sort of, kind of, not really. Anyways, we will go back out. This was a card that was one of the arts organizations I belonged to. I had a guest speaker at their last AGM, and she passed out these cards, and then we did a little bit of printmaking using Play-Doh. I've got notes on that in there. But when I was done, I happened to have markers with me as well, so I colored it up because the prints kind of looked like fish to me. That's actually from taking an impression of these. Anyways, I slapped it in. It's taped in. So actually that was the first I was using this sketchbook. So this is like a little alcohol marker sketch of a tree that was outside the building. Oh, and this started June 26, 2025. It finished yesterday. I am filming this on Friday, November 21st. Anyway, so sketch. And this is from the drawing. As you can see, this is a lesson for me that alcohol markers, they bleed through regular sketchbook pages. Anyways, so I was doing some doodling, and you'll notice where there's tape, it's like organization names, info, stuff that I don't need to make public. So, anyways, and I started doodling. Honestly wasn't impressed with the guest speaker, hence the Ricky doing his best "what the hell are you talking about" expression. It says Tucker Carlson there, but I mean Tucker back, long ago Tucker Carlson, not... I'm not even gonna go there, but you know what I mean. But anyways, here's Ricky looking all confused. And there's Myles thinking about nuclear explosions, dropping bombs. Well, there's big business in dropping bombs, I suppose. Myles, he's all about profit anyways, and he's got little wingtip shoes on there. And then I did a doodle of Noah, and again, this is from the same day. Noah with a pie. Ursula, she's not a pie girl. As far as she's concerned, pies are stealth health food because they have fruit in it, and fruit and vegetables you're supposed to eat, so why would you want that? She wants chocolate cake. Anyways, Noah is thinking, some days I swear this kid's a changeling. Who doesn't like pie? And Ursula's whining, pie again. These are the details. So you have your blob of Play-Doh. You goober it down onto whatever you want your impression of. You get the impression. You roll it on a stamp pad. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and say this is not archival. These were regular Staples stamp pads. But, I mean, you can get archival stamp pads. Myles sells them and whatnot. They're like $14 each because, bend over and grab your ankles. Remember your coupon. Anyways, you roll the impression side on the stamp pad, and then you press that onto paper, you get your impression, and now you have your imprint. Actually, purse I had at the time was kind of tooled leather, and somebody wanted to know if they could do it on that, and I was just like, no. Even though it's a black purse, I'm like, yeah, all the Play-Doh had goobered with black ink and stuff on it. Like, no, you can't rub your... Plus, Play-Doh is kind of greasy in a weird way, chemical way too. Yeah, don't be rubbing your shit on my shit, okay? You know, that's all I'm saying. Maybe I'm a bitch, but the purse was not cheap. Anyways, it's me being a diva. So we have our some budget, blah, 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 for the arts organization. And then, of course, Ricky is in the shadow. I'm just going to pull that up like that. Myles is doing a sale, well, it's not sale, well, it's sort of sales, but not like sales figures presentation, not sales buy this stuff presentation. Anyways, he's showing that the cheese sales have been up and down, and then he's yelling at Ricky, stop eating the inventory, and Ricky's very confused because he thought the cheese was there for staff benefits. Anyways, and we got Noah looking all surprised. What the hell has he got there? Yeah, I can't remember whether that was supposed to be cookie dough with nuts and chocolate chips in it, or whether it's ice cream with chocolate chips in it, or whatever. Something with chocolate chips in it. I was talking about stamps. I have, you know, I'm not a big stamp kind of gal, but I do have a set that's kind of fun to play with in Sketchbook. So I had his little exclamation points there. And then Myles and shoes. Okay, so sometimes when I actually get my ass in gear and I do the Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat marker sketch comics every Sunday like I'm supposed to, and like I have not been doing. I can't say it all this year. There were like 3 or 4 done this year, but I'm way behind on that. Anyways, if I have full body, I gotta draw shoes on Myles, and that's kind of like, well, Myles seems to me the kind of guy who would wear old school formal shoes. So I did kind of a Google search on formal men's shoes, and I did some drawings. So you got your cap toe Oxfords, preferably with closed lacing and not the crisscross lacing. You got your monk straps, Chelsea boots. I don't know if Myles would really wear Chelsea boots. It seems if he was going to go that casual, he'd probably wear boat shoes. He's got his brogued wingtips, and then penny loafers, and some notes about colors and stuff like that. So later on, at some point, I might actually make little puppets of these guys. I have ideas, because I'm not far enough behind on my painting and book release schedule. I have ideas of getting even further behind by taking a detour into doing some like puppet stuff and building puppets of Ricky and Myles, and probably eventually Noah and Ursula and whatnot. But I was actually going to be taking a puppet building class this term, which ended up getting canceled. And sad though I was that it got canceled, I was also kind of relieved because, anyways, this was kind of right at the time that I was having some major burnout issues in why am I saying January? Well, I was burned out in January too, but this is specifically October. It got way worse since January. I actually had to drop a small business class. Some of it was about workload, and some of it was just about like, okay, I wanted practical tips about here's when you register with Canada Revenue Agency. Here's how you handle bookkeeping, day-to-day, like that sort of stuff. But instead it was like very theoretical. I guess doing like competitive analysis and whatnot isn't so much theoretical, but writing a 2,000-word essay about it is. Anyways, that one I actually did. The second one was business plan stuff, and that was going to be okay. But anyways, I was kind of already done at that point. And then the third assignment, if I'd stayed in it, would have been a group project. Everybody else in the class is international teenagers, like it's international students from India mostly, and like fresh out of high school. So you think about your average high school kid and how devoted they are to doing their homework. Yeah. I dealt with this twice in the spring, and it was pure hell every time because teenagers, they look at it and the thing's due on November 30th, so you don't do your part of the group assignment until the morning of November 30th, right? And then Magic Elves will put it together into a 2,000 word essay that afternoon and submit it at 11:59, right? And anyways, dealt with this twice in the spring, and I just decided like I was going to have a mental breakdown if I had to do that this term. So I decided, fuck them all. I quit the class. Anyways, around that time was when the public building class got canceled. But I did, in the meantime, I did get some little, I had to get like toddler size shoes. And I found some little pimp ass looking pale yellow wingtips for the Myles puppet. Anyways, that's why I mentioned that whole long story. But the class got canceled. Hopefully next year it'll be offered again and actually go ahead. But I have all the stuff boxed up. There's blogs about this on my Substack. Hey, Pyra, when you're editing, put the Substack link in. Or flash across the screen. And put the link down below. Anyways, point is I was drawing shoes for research. Notes from a Toastmasters meeting. I covered up people's names. Sketch of Noah admiring himself in the mirror. Just think, Ruth, only 18 more years and the kids will move out and we can run around naked all we like. Ruth not too enthused about the idea about running around naked in 20 years. Probably not that enthused about running around naked now. Anyways, Ursula, because I was doing comics where she would... Noah every year puts Ursula in a bunch of like day camps in the summer to keep her busy. So she's not at home whining at him that she's bored for 12 weeks. Or I guess it's only 9 weeks. But anyways, one of them was a mystery solver one. And so here she is as Inspector Ursula. She's got her little Sherlock Holmes hat. And she's thinking, when are we going to learn the more important parts of being mystery sleuths? Like billing and finding new clients. That is the most important part. You got to get paid. Otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, you got to have a shitty day job, and who wants one of those? Anyways, and then these are some sketches for... I haven't posted printmaking reels in a while. I have a whole bunch that I've done. I just haven't, like, that are ready to post. I just haven't posted them. So maybe I should do that. But I had... did I get all 4 of these done? But I don't know if I got Noah and the Mrs. Claus, but I definitely got these ones done, I think. So maybe I'll post those on Saturdays in December. I had to work out how to... Because she's got her list flopping over, so it's upside down, right? But also it's printmaking, so it's upside down and backwards. So I had to figure that out. Anyways, and then I traced it. The lettering did turn out really well. The only thing I find, like I was doing these types of monotypes at Ladysmith Arts on their printmaking drop-in, and that's kind of... There's a printmaking drop-in that's Mondays and Fridays for the more advanced printmakers, but there's only like space for like 4, and there's kind of an established group that goes in on those days. And then there's somebody else, my friend, runs it for the new, we should do it this way, new printmakers who aren't part of that group, or they can be, but they don't have to be. And that was sometimes on Saturdays, sometimes on Wednesday nights and whatnot. Anyways, I don't know if it was even offered this term. So I haven't been doing much printmaking, but also I'm kind of like going like, I am pulled in way too many directions, doing too much stuff. Obviously, I like the cartooning. I'm working on books, graphic novels, so that's my main thing. I also have always wanted to be doing painting, and kind of different points in my life I've gotten away from it, gotten back to it, gotten away from it, gotten back to it. I'm back to it now. And I want to be kind of a little more serious about the painting going forward. So, But then I do need to be more on top of like marketing and like posting on YouTube, yada, 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 going forward. And once the first book is done in the next, and that's going to be an anthology of Noah's Archipelago. But when it's done, actually pretty shortly, it should be done by New Year's, and then there'll be some back and forth with test copies, because I'm doing it through Amazon KDP, print on demand. So it probably won't launch until like March or April, but the book is going to be done very soon, which means it's time for me to actually like set my business up properly, yada, 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 with an Etsy shop and business license, the whole 9 yards. So that's going to suck a lot of my time, and then promotion, yada, yada, yada. I keep saying yada, yada, yada. You'd think this is a Seinfeld episode or something. Eh? Well, it kind of is a show about nothing, I guess. Well, it's a show about my sketchbook, but anyway, something's got to give. And honestly, the monotypes, I mean, it's kind of, sometimes it's like one Saturday afternoon every couple weeks, so it's not a lot, but then we use Akua inks, which are greasy and they take forever to dry. So then I have to have like every surface in my house covered with prints drying. And then sometimes they never fully dry and they still feel a little greasy when you touch them. So if I guess I would have to put them with a mat, so that if they're in a cellophane bag, the cellophane bag has a teeny tiny little gap between the plastic and the print. And then depending how shipping goes, it might still like, and then screw it up. Anyways, it becomes a whole thing, right? And then it's one-offs. Whereas lino cuts, you carve the block, and like, I have a friend who's been printing with her same lino blocks, and sometimes and she does full time with this, right? And she has some lino blocks that are like 10 years old, and she's still able to print with them. So probably switch over more to lino for that reason, but also I don't know how much lino I'm gonna sell. It's a whole thing. For now, I think I'm going to be focusing just on cartooning and painting, and then if the printmaking comes back in later on, we'll fit it into the schedule then. But okay, so let's try and go faster, eh? Sketch Noah being paranoid. It's quiet, too quiet. And then Ursula. These are also trees drawn outside of, actually drawn outside of Ladysmith Art's current location when I was waiting to go in for a printmaking thing. Ursula's got her little rubber suction cup, a bow and arrow, and she realized he's onto her. These are some names from the Souk Fine Arts Center, Fine Arts Show in July. Artists whose work I thought was particularly cool, and wow, there's a lot of them. It was a very good show. Anyways, we have Noah looking at some abstract art, being impressed. I was easily impressed. Ursula, I could do that. Actually, so could Valerie if you gave her spinach. Valerie being the baby who's always barfing. And now we are into notes from a painting class I took with Mitchell Villa in early August. That was the thumbnail of what I was going to do. It's based on an old Noah cartoon where he's dressed up like a pineapple singing the Pina Colada song. And taking, well, actually in this case, I guess he's doing reels of himself. Now, I just realized it's kind of drawn as if that's the back of the camera, so the camera would be pointing at us, not at him. And you could use the face thing and then you could see it, but the face camera, I think, is supposed to be really poor quality, comparatively speaking. So I don't know if you would want to film a whole reel, turn the other way. Who knows? Anyways, Myles is looking, and Myles has opinions. That guy looks like an idiot. Noah, on the other hand, does that pineapple outfit make me look fat? Notes and sketches from reference material we were doing in the class. Flip through a little more quickly. Some ideas. Actually, really isn't my painting style. There is another thumbnail of the thing. That painting isn't done yet. I need to, hopefully over Christmas I'll get it done. And then Noah remembered. Did he remember to post that pineapple reel? And what did I say about the baby barfing? She's not a big fan of having been fed pureed broccoli. some sketching on location, the food court at Hillside Shopping Center in, not Duncan, Victoria. And the pews at St. Andrew's Cathedral. Pretty sure those are all the original ones from the 1890s. We don't have a lot of old buildings like that here. I'm trying to draw the roof of St. Andrews and getting very frustrated. I will be starting to do more urban sketching in 2026 because I think my backgrounds need it. Anyways, this is notes from a screenwriting workshop I took, and I've got some pages stuck together if they don't have drawings, just so it's faster. Oh, Noah. The comment was, you never know, you don't say what the characters are thinking, you just make it so the audience can infer it. But Noah, error 404, thoughts not found. Ricky there. Myles, what I was kind of workshopping in that workshop, I used kind of tied to the election day episode of Ricky B, the Rock and Roll Rat podcast edition from last year, where Myles was running for city council. So I kind of, because I didn't have any other ideas, I used that as a kind of dummy plot to work through. So and some ideas about scripts. I could totally see Myles in like an Alfa Romeo type of little sports car being stuck behind at, I said Star Mouse, but Starbucks, having road rage because the granny in front is like talking to the barista at the window, and he's late. And then we're talking about road maps, I guess. So there's Myles looking at one. And then part of the thing with that podcast plot, and hey Pyra, when you're editing, put the link below, was that Myles is up against Al Water Rat, and one of the idea, who's the mayor of Ratsville, where Myles has moved to, even though he's half rat, half mouse, which is why he's so much shorter. The whole thing was kind of sparked from something I heard many years ago, which is that the taller candidate usually wins the election. So if Myles is only comes up to the chins of all the rat people, is he going to win? Hell no. And there's jokes in that episode where Ricky is helping Myles' campaign, and as he's handing out flyers, people are telling him, yeah, Al Waterette is 6'2". They're going to vote for Al. Al is corrupt as hell. Anyways, and then a little cartoon of, because I've been starting to do some stuff with Noah and the rats kind of running into each other. So they're running in. Noah's coming into the men's room, and there's Myles washing his hands, and Noah's thinking, crap, another rat. This is a full-on infestation. And Myles is like, what the hell are you looking at, pal? Again, this is all still being doodled in that screenwriting class. I'm not planning to become an actual screenwriter, but there's similarities between writing scripts for graphic novels and writing screenplays, so that's why I was there. Anyways, Myles and his anger issues beating the crap out of somebody in the yard, but it's Noah's yard, so he's thinking, I should say something. Actually, no, there's no point. That little dude said he'd torch my house. And Myles would. He totally would. His dad is a used car sales tycoon within a whole dealership empire in Moston. So, Myles has not really had to face any consequences for his actions. We're talking about log lines. So, typical Noah plot. Barfed on by the baby, a sleep-deprived dad heads back to the laundry room for the 10th time today and ponders how such a tiny baby could make so much puke. He wants to know why he gets the crap stories, because Ricky B goes to see. By the way, this is the graphic novel I am working on right now. Will it be finished next year? God, I hope so. Inspired by divine revelation, a landlubben lout, that being Ricky B. Rat, sets out to find shipwrecked treasure to impress his girlfriend and challenge his limits. It makes it sound like it's not a farce. That's the funny thing with log lines, is that they work for the plot regardless of the genre, right? And then the one I had for the little Myles thing. Disgusted by the corruption of his local government. Well, less people aren't. Myles is disgusted by the fact that it wasn't his corruption. But anyways, a cynical accountant vows to take down the mayor amidst hostile press attacks and must decide when to walk away. Now we have notes from handout from that class. That was a handout from Mitchell's class back in August that was kicking around in the book. Some actual, honest-to-God, observational sketching, and done in a car, no less. This was a camper that was parked in the Princess Auto parking lot on August 26, 2025, and my dad was in shopping, and I was bored, and I actually sketched it. This, come down and see Crazy Larry, the original Mouston used car czar. Well, that is Miles's dad, and this, I did a quick sketch of it. Like, I mocked this up in Procreate, and then I printed it out, used my light pad to trace it with a blue non-photo pencil onto a piece of Bristol board, which then I inked, and then that was a submission that I put into the Cowichan exhibition this year, and it won first place in the cartoon division. And that is a highly competitive division. Granted, mostly, let's be blunt, most of my competitors were teenagers, so, is it that much to brag about? But hey, I got a $20 extra prize on, normally at Cowics you get, first place gets you $5, but I got $20, so anyways. And now I have that frame, because you have to have it framed for the exhibition. Now it's hanging in my hall. One of these days, I gotta have some more story plot lines about Miles's family over in Mouston. Anyways, there's Noah looking in the mirror. He's seeing his little pot belly. He doesn't really have one here, or he's sucking it in there, but he knows. He knows he's been eating too many apple pies. This was from one of my writers group meetings. I was drawing Ricky, and then one of our members who's sitting beside me kind of elbowed me and asked me if I could draw a train, because the story she was going to read had to do with the train up in Alaska. So these two I think I drew from like memory, like, I don't know, it's been a long time since I looked at a locomotive. That one I think I also drew from memory. And then I got on my phone, I'm like trying to be secretive, like, because it's a reading night, you're supposed to be paying attention to what other people are saying. But I found these two and then sketched the reference photos. Anyways, my club mate was impressed. And then we have Noah looking at a butterfly. He's got his little cleaning thing. He's obviously been washing his car because he knows the butterfly is going to shit on his freshly washed car. And then I got some stickers and drew in a whole bunch of birds with full bowels waiting to also shit on Noah's freshly washed car. This guy's going to come all the way from Antarctica. As a thumbnail for one of the Noah sketches, where he's ignoring cartoon duty. It's kind of a running gag that Noah gets pissy at and pissed off at the cartoonist and shirks his work duties. Anyways, here he is at home, cleaning up broken eggs. Ursula's out of eggs for a trebuchet, and Noah's starting to regret telling her about the wonders of science. Noah's missing some berries. Ursula is not says they were terrible. This was done, Canadian Authors Association. This must have been done at one of the writers group meetings, but it sketches about the Cowichan exhibition. So, because we do have a cannabis division. I think they judge it based on how it looks and smells. I don't know. I don't think they actually sample the goods. I don't know. But ever since marijuana, recreational weed was legalized in Canada, now we have, because there are guys and probably some gals who grow it in our valley. So there is a homegrown cannabis division. So anyways, Ricky hears this and he is going to appoint himself as judge. See? Official judge. The fact that it's written in crayon on the back of a McDonald's, or pardon me, McGratburger napkin doesn't make it any less official, but does that. And he goes up and he wants to sample or judge the weed and cheese. Of course, because it's a cartoon, you have to spell it right, but he would not spell it right. He would think it's spelled that way. Anyways, he's here to judge the weed and cheese. And he points that he's got himself an official judge lanyard, badge, whatever thing. We don't actually have a cheat section. Strangely enough, we have jams, we have... It is weird. Why don't we have a cheese section? It's probably some sort of a regulation. Anyways, I'm thinking because there is a fine art section and there is an acrylic painting class within that. But I think I'm going to take some of my reference pictures or photos I've taken inside the hall, have them as the background, and then have like this pose where he's pointing at his badge, but this kind of, obviously I've screwed up the face there, but kind of combine those and have Ricky there pointing at his official judge and have the title be "Take Me to Your Weed and Cheese." Something like that. I have to figure out how, in the context of an acrylic painting, that usually I don't put speech bubbles in my acrylic paintings, even when they're cartoons. So I'm wondering how I can make it very... I mean, I guess that makes it clear he's not actually the official judge. And the title. The thing. Maybe what I'll do is have it where there's already ribbons in the background so you know that the judging has already happened. I don't know. But it would be kind of funny to put a painting inspired by Cow-X into Cow-X. So stay tuned for that. And that was... the last couple of years, I've been having umbrellas made with that year's logo and theme on it. And then they hang them from the roofs and then they sell them afterwards. So people can buy them. They're, I think, $20 or $25 each. They're kind of a popular little thing. I don't know how much of a fundraiser it actually is, but, you know, probably 50 or 100 of them, I would think. So, I'll probably make a little bit of money for the fair. And writers group notes and different arts group organization. I've got like, you can probably figure out which one it is based on the something that I didn't quite cover with tape. But anyways, I covered up like money numbers and stuff. Anyway, some little doodles. Myles would be at this sort of thing with a martini. Actually, he probably wouldn't show up. He'd show up to the openings, but not to that. And some more doodles. And some more honest to God in the parking lot of Princess Auto, what the sketchbook is intended for, observational drawing. That Dodge grill took frickin', it's from, like, it is tiny. That's probably roughly life size. And it took a stupidly long amount of time. Toastmaster stuff. I did a speech that was about Ricky, and then I did reactions to that. Well, Noah would be offended. Notes from Noah. Stop talking about those stupid rats. Talk about me instead. In the speech, I said that Myles is 3'11", or is 2.5 feet tall. He took a lot of offense at that, as you can see. Got up on his step stool and everything to prove he's 3'11". And Ricky thought it was a great speech because it was about Ricky. He doesn't understand why other people are mad. Read in there, this needs more pictures and less big words. And then notes from, finally we're into the painting classes for this year, this term. Myles has notes about what I'm supposed to be painting. Remember, no rats. Spoiler alert, the only thing I'm painting in this class, and this is also a Mitchell Villa workshop, the only thing I'm painting is a portrait of Ricky. Oh, Ricky, want to know why you're so cranky? Well, the comment about push yourself just had me have the idea of Noah trying to push Ricky off a cliff, but the cartoonist did not draw a cliff, so sucks to be you, Noah. And then this, I want to do this painting at some point. I just did not have time to do that and the other one. So this is spoofing on the Warhol, you know, the Marylands. The Art Gallery of Greater Victoria had a Warhol and Banksy. It also has some Liechtenstein, like a pop art show in the summer, or spring actually. And I have a shot where it's 9 of the different Marylands. So I want to figure out a way And the other thing is, how do you make it kind of identical and matching? I would have to do some kind of stencil, I think, for that, and then kind of match the from the reference photo I have, match the Warhol colors, but they're all Noah. So the idea is he's done self-portraits. That would probably, again, I talked about speech bubbles. I might do that as the title of the work and not having a speech bubble, but where it's very clearly he's done self-portraits and he's very pleased with himself. I have a canvas ready for it. I just didn't have time to get going on it. And that is why from now on I'm only taking one class per term, even if it only is half the term long. Anyways, what I'm actually doing, same title, although that's not going to be the final actual title, but I just had this thumbnail where Noah's idea of the great subject matter is himself, and Ricky is painting cheese. And then I found an old Van Dyke, but there's a couple painters named Van Dyke from that era. I think he's one of the lesser known Van Dykes. I could be wrong. I'd have to look that up. But anyways, he had a still life with blocks of cheese piled up and fruit and all this. So that's like the front of the painting. And anyways, when the painting is done, I'll like film an up and down of it. Actually, one of the things I probably won't get it started now, but starting in December, kind of after that painting is done, I'm going to be trying to do a weekly like work with me video. So I would set up the camera and paint. I probably wouldn't like film the entire, if I have a whole day or a whole afternoon to paint, I probably won't film all of it because that's going to be freaking long. So either I would have to like have like 2 hours of footage and speed it up and do a voiceover, or I'd have like the mic on and do something like this, but then I'd probably only film like half an hour or something. It might be, I have to decide how I'm going to do it, because it would kind of be interesting to show longer works and the evolution over weeks, but then I don't know, that might get boring. It's like, okay, there's a 20-minute video and all she did was she painted some grapes. So I don't know. I might kind of do the work with me on like smaller paintings where I can like realistically finish it and then do a voiceover on it. You know, I don't know. We will see. Anyways, I was also taking an expressive figure, which his instructor's name is Victor. I forget his last name. I like that class, sort of. It would have been better like 3 or 4 years ago before I had my direction, or even 2 years ago when I was like, I had Ricky already, I had Noah already. I wanted to get back to painting, but I was like, I don't know what to do. And I guess at that point, my brain was like, well, yeah, but your paintings are separate from your cartooning. Now, the breakthrough I had last summer was, no, fuck that. Paint your cartoon characters and make them look like real people. So that started with the Vote for Myles painting. So now I'm kind of like, the class is just different from what I was expecting, right? It's a lot of figure drawing. Not all, but the vast majority of the models are women, but the problem is the vast majority of my characters are men. And then also the instructor sets up the poses and like the narrative with the models, and then we draw that, and most of the time it's kind of like, I don't give a shit about that, but other people in the class love it. So it's just, where are you in your current stage of art development or whatever? And do you actually, is this useful or not? Like for me, I already knew the proportions of the face. So like I've known that since high school. It's fine to have a refresher, but like there's other people in the class who are like, can you explain like the straight and curve, how the eyeball is made again? And part of me, I'm just like, but that's me. Great for other people. I am not taking his class that's offered in January. I'm kind of like, okay, I know what this is about, and it ain't working for me. So, anyways, notes. I thought it was taping all the stuff together that had like pages like that don't have drawings. Anyways, whatever. We're just flipping through quickly. This was actually okay. I mentioned the business class that I dropped. The second assignment was like a business plan. So I had it, but you had to do a presentation of it, PowerPoint, but on video. So I was planning how I could do that because he wanted to see you talk, which I get because that sort of prevents students from doing like having AI do it. But anyways, planning this out, just getting the script written. It's like, and by the way, I have my business plan roughed out. Like some of the details about merch and whatnot, I don't, but I have the basic plan, like sell books, sell original art, do markets, blah, 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 that done. But trying to write the script one day, it's like, oh, it's a 10-minute video that works out to about 700 words of script, right? 1,000 if you talk fast, like I kind of do. But anyways, it should have taken me, I figured 2 hours to, and I already had it in point form. Should have taken me 2 hours to take that, make it into sentences, and chop the extraneous shit. I worked on it for like 10 hours that day. That was when I was like, I think I need to and I was getting more and more confused as the time went on. It's like I'm either having a brain aneurysm or I'm like burned out, exhausted. So anyways, that's when I dropped the class. I never did the video. Anyways, this was a couple weeks ago. So I was also, as if my 2 art classes weren't bad enough, plus the UVic one that I dropped, I also signed my dumbass up for life drawing. And on this particular day, granted, I was already exhausted, burned out, and starting kind of a little bit sick too. But the model wanted to fuck with the spotlights. And then the process, one of them ended up being aimed directly in my eyes. And we're back. We interrupt this sketchbook tour for a impromptu visit from my dad. I didn't think he was coming over today. Anyways, so where were we? I think I was complaining about the time a couple weeks ago in life drawing class where the model insisted on screwing with the spotlight, the track lighting in the ceiling. I'm realizing that life drawing really is not my vibe. I'm better using like paparazzi or video still images for pose references and whatnot. But anyways, I had lights in my eyes. I thought they were fine initially. Within 5 minutes, I felt a migraine coming on, went to move to a different corner of the room. But by that point, I was still like, I couldn't raise my head and look forward. So this is Noah with the same complaint, shielding his very sensitive little eyeballs. And they must be more sensitive because they bulge out. Anyways, notes from Victor's class talking about drapery folds, which is definitely something that I know I need to work on. Particularly, well, in Noah, I tend to use, because I do that comic currently in Procreate, I'm going to be switching to Clip Studio Pro because hunching over my iPad is killing my back and neck. But I use kind of like a marker thing so I can kind of build the color and try and do some folds, but it's very half-assed. So, but I also don't have the patience to like, draw a pattern like this on fabric with folds. So, but I probably should. Anyways, what I should probably do actually, did I ever show these on YouTube? Maybe I did. Let me rummage through a handy dandy desk drawer that's right next to here. But for a little bit, a couple years ago, yeah, I do have these. I was doing stuff like looking at photos, and because I was doing that Bonomo sketchbook, I kind of was using pics of him because that was convenient. But I was looking at photos like that and doing charcoal, trying to get like the toning, like, yeah, who cares about him? But in terms of like the jacket and whatnot, that one was a more detailed study, and that's dark, plain old black I think it's Conte Conte crayon, which is just compressed charcoal, using the black for the darkest and the white for the lightest, and then, using tone paper, but like that area. I should probably, there's another one, do more of that stuff again. And not necessarily with our leprechaun friend there, but I have tons of like old magazines with pictures of Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, all those guys, right? So I have a lot of pictures of dudes in black leather to use as reference, and especially because, uh, Noah tends to wear a black leather jacket in the wintertime over his oversized, open, unbuttoned satin shirts. So, like this sort of like elbow creases, and of course Ricky as well. Let me pull. I think I've shown what I'm about to show. Don't drop the tack. I have this tacked up, but this probably isn't the best. But this is like a watercolor rendering of Ricky B. Rat. But he's always, because he wants to be Sid Vicious. He very much appreciates Sid Vicious and his aesthetic and whatnot. And I'm immediately going into the hillbilly kind of voice that Ricky has. I don't know why, because none of his rat friends in Ratsville talk like this, just Ricky. But anyways, because he wears a black leather jacket and black jeans, which I don't think Ricky's jeans are leather. I think they're just black denim. But, sometimes I've tried to be a little more diligent about practicing how the folds might go and whatnot. And I am because I'm working on the Ricky B. Rat graphic novel right now, as previously mentioned. Well, I mean, that's a straight up black and white rendition, so I will have to be drawing. I can't cheat using color or whatnot in that like I can with Noah in the digital version. So anyways, blah, blah, blah. We happened to have a class that was all about drapery. It was my favorite class of that. It was my favorite session of that class. So I think I mentioned about the instructor getting models to pose in certain ways to fit a narrative, and then we kind of it's one model, but we kind of put the poses together as there are multiple people. So this day we had to do the two. Yeah, I mean, for the class I'm working on like, I don't know, 18 by 24 sheets of paper pad, but I also did these sketches. So there's Noah, the pose. He's doing selfies, except he's talking to the front camera, but anyways, whatever. And then Ursula's sitting on a log with her back turned, pissed off because she's bored. And of course, the pages are going to stick together now. So we have some more kind of that, and then a more detailed rendering. Like, what would Noah be doing? Well, he's got his foot up on a log, and it's a fish, and then that's one of Duke's son, or that is Duke, who's one of Noah's sons. So, anyways, so that's the big brother, whose stepdad is a hunting guide, and so Duke grew up hunting and fishing and whatnot. So I guarantee you that fish was caught by Duke, not by Noah. Noah always only catches a teeny little yellow perch, which he always insists is a big one for real this time. And Ursula hates the outdoors, so there you go. Long-winded explanation, more notes that we don't really need. Why didn't I tell you that's making masking tape stencils? My to-do list for this weekend before the next painting class. Got to work on Ricky's skin tone and shadows and hair. I guess because I'm doing the sketchbook tour and I'm talking about it, I should probably do a quick pan over the painting at the very end. And then some more pose references from Victor's class. Just quick sketches. And then life drawing. Or no, that wasn't from Victor's class. That was life drawing. Maybe it was Victor's class. I don't know. Can't have been. I don't even remember. And this was like 2 days ago. I think this was added in Victor's class the day after that. But I mentioned life drawing, and for me, it's just not working out. So life drawing class, I was bored as hell this week. So I didn't want to be rude and walk out in the middle. I have done that a couple times if I was feeling like crap. But I just sat in the corner and I doodled in my sketchbook for the duration of the life drawing class. And none of these are poses that were actually being done in front of me. So kind of got an ongoing joke because, this kind of shows the size differential. But Myles comes up to here on Ricky because Myles is half rat, half mouse. So he's quite a bit shorter when you think in the actual mice would be like that size. So anyways, he gets pissed off now that he lives in Ratsville and people at this time of year confuse him for being one of Santa's elves. He's a little bit touchy about the height thing. So yeah, here he is. He's reading Wall Street News and Tips. And a little girl says, "Mommy, look, an elf." "No, honey, I think he's a mouse." And Myles is seething. And then in a store, I was thinking, you go to Home Sense here in Canada, and Home Goods, I think, is the American version. I assume Home Goods has like the area rugs at the back on the thing where you flip through them, you know what I mean? And they hang. So I envisioning Myles looking at an area rug and some little kid, who is the same height as him despite being a rat, but this kid's like 8. "Mr. Elf, what's Santa giving me for Christmas?" "Hopefully a new brain and some manners." And then here's Ricky. "Dude, you should be more..." Dude. Now that I want to do the Ricky voice, it's going to elude me. Because in my head now, I hear him as a California surfer dude. He's not. He talks like a hillbilly. "Dude, you should be more chill. Kids are just kind of dumb and excited, that's all." And Myles is telling him to shut the fuck up because he's not an elf. Because over there, "Look, Susie, look at the cute little elf. I told you Santa's spies are all over." And this one kind of a screwed up. I think I was planning to make his head a lot bigger, but that's what happens when you start with the magazine and work outwards. Insider Trading Monthly. Which EVs explode the most? Whose CEOs are going to jail next? And then I kind of hasn't really turned up in the comics, but in my sketchbooks, there's a bit of a running gag, especially where Noah likes to think himself. Well, in the comics, it's kind of Ruth is the one who's very book and literature focused, and she's very critical of Noah reading trashy stuff like Jackie Collins' Hollywood Wives. But then in some of these sketchbook drawings, Noah himself he's reading trashy shit, but then he's also kind of looking down his nose at other people's reading materials. So, there's Myles reading Insider Trading Monthly, and Noah is sure that the rats have no appreciation for fine literature like he does. Jackie Collins trashy sex novels, by the way. Ursula's reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and thinking it's boring and needs more explosions. Ricky, that's a real book, by the way. Cheese, Sex, Death. Spelled correctly, but in Ricky's world, cheese is spelled with a Z or a Z, depending on your preference for letters. But it's actually a cookbook. Came up on an Amazon search where I was looking for cheese books that Ricky might possibly be reading. So he obviously was not expecting it to be a recipe book, but he's very intrigued now that he's reading that. And we have some stuff about compositions, pose references. The one pose, I think this narration was supposed to be that one figure is giving good news to another figure, and then 2 other figures are like super excited for it. But honestly, the way the poses looked, when I drew them all together, it looked more like Mean Girls bullying a girl in the cafeteria, like 3 of them. Anyways, whatever. I wasn't going to argue with the instructor. I'll just ignore it like I do every other assignment for that class, because that's how I roll. Passive aggressive. Anyways, one pose kind of made me think of like a skateboarder with one leg up. So there's Noah on a skateboard. But I did have an idea for the poses, well, only using 3 of them. Ruth being shocked, sitting back going, "Oh," it's like, "Oh my God," and Noah's telling her. So then the school got struck by lightning, and there's Ursula, arms raised up, looking towards the Lord, going, "Hallelujah," because Ursula hates school. Anyways. Blah, 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 blah. We're almost done, folks. I know, I've been talking forever. And I just hit the light. Get back in there. And then that was another rendering I did of kind of the 4 postures, but one of them being Ricky. So Ricky's girlfriend, Baby, and her friends from cosmetology school gossiping. It would seem that Baby's saying something weird that happened on Ricky and Baby's last date. So Ricky's trying to get her like, okay, baby, I think we should go now, before she spills too much to her friends. And then I'm going to have a change to the pose where he's kind of tapping her on the back, like, come on, let's go. And then where she's just like, and then I hit the light again. Like shoving him away because she is not done gossiping about what he did dumb on their date. And then, because I wanted to finish it off quickly, yesterday I was watching Daywave, comedy podcasts I sometimes watch, and just decided to do quick marker sketches of the various hosts. So that's Pessy, that's Royce, that's John. This is not one of the hosts. It's some guy whose video they were kind of making fun of. He was like doing a sex tourism in Rio de Janeiro thing, and oh, so this is what you pay for a hooker, but and pretending that he was doing it for journalistic purposes, probably doing it his own. But the guy had a weird swelling on maybe it was just the lighting, but it looked like his forehead was swollen like a beluga whale's melon, I think is what they call it. So anyways, so not one of the hosts. And then Frozen Asian is the other one, and then this is all handouts from class, so different stuff. Now, the 8-head standard, honestly, some people are really, and this gets into, people get all pissy about, 8-head figures, 7 versus 7.5 versus 7, and honestly, it depends on the photography. She looks like a fucking pinhead, honestly. That camera, I don't think, I guess the camera is centered for the height of the figure, but then what that means is her hip is the center of focus, and her feet don't look that proportionally out of balance, but that head is freaking small, right? So sorry, I'm gonna move my light because it's rattling against that, but she looks like a pinhead. And granted, obviously we have a bit of a distorted view because we see people at eye level. So unless you're a midget, that's not your eye level, you're up here. So then her head will proportionally look bigger and everything else becomes foreshortened. But that to me just looks freaking wrong. And what I used to hear people say about, the 8-head standard is an idealized form. It's not real. And you can see in that it looks very distorted to my eyes. And some people say 7.5. Some people say, oh, that's because they cut it off at the ankles. That's stupid. No, that's not anyways. I've also heard people say that actually when you look at real people on the street, if you place your camera and try and get it as least distorted as possible, so you're probably taking photos of people from further away. Granted, a telephoto does its own distortion, but that tends to be a flattening this way as opposed to, up and down. Most people I have heard will actually appear to be more 7 heads tall. So, and obviously I'm used to doing cartoons. If you looked at Noah, I usually draw about 7. Yeah, I'd say about 7. Maybe not. Probably do draw Noah about. I'd have to go and look at a static drawing. Mostly I'm drawing Noah in poses, so he's bent over, or it's foreshortened in some other way. But if I drew him naturally, I would say Noah's probably about a 7-head figure. And his legs are a little bit short. So yeah. Also, this is distorted because usually when you hear about the 4 head, the 8-head figure, the 4th head is right there at the crotch. This one, that 4th head is down in the thigh. So yeah, this is distorted. anyways, don't get me started. I've already rambled about that, but yeah, there's arguments about that, and it depends. Well, you would probably have to do, I'm trying to think, because I think Leonardo da Vinci's, the dude in the circle, the arms out, I think that's a eight head tall figure too, but I've often heard people say, well, that's distorted because it's, the limbs are proportionally too long. But it also depends because, like, I had a friend in, was it high school? We were the exact same height. If we were standing together side by side with, and I'm just ruffling through things that are going to be like old comics that will become paintings at some point. Really, I should take them out of the sketchbook because I have somewhere else to hide my references. But for visual interest, there you go. There's Noah trying to decide whether he should open Ruth's box parcel. This is a cartoon from last year. Oh yeah, I was saying my friend. Like I'm at this point, I've shrunk a little. I'm 5'6" now. I swear I used to be 5'6.5", but now I'm 5'6". Anyways, she and I were the same height. If we stood side by side, like I'm very long torsoed, her crotch was at the top of my hips, so like almost 6 inches higher. Now she was the opposite extreme. It was all legs and no body, right? And I'm short legs and long body, right? So a normal person probably be in between. A normal woman be halfway in between. But so people do have different proportions and whatnot. But that one, the 8-head figure, she looks like a pinhead. It's a very distorted image, if you ask me. It's a 3/4, so like oh yeah, that's the other problem. Okay. Since I'm ranting, the other thing is because this isn't a dead-on flat front view, she's at 3/4. This means that shoulder and that hip are, they're, depending on how wide her butt and hips are versus her waist, they could be, some women it's going to be like 3 or 4 inches, sideways out from where the waist is. So that's closer to the camera, and that's closer to the camera. That's 6 inches back from the camera, right? So it's very distorted, but also, like, I'm not saying that there aren't women who look exactly like that. There probably are. They'd be rare, but she reminds me very much of, there is, I don't remember the name of it. It was 20 years ago, but seeing a one of those like news documentary type of things, and they're talking about the fashion industry and images and whatnot. But they actually showed, like, if you think about what Cindy Crawford looked like, and she was very thin and a knockout, all this stuff, not denying it. But there was a photo of Cindy Crawford where she was, and I should just sketch this because, hey, it is a sketchbook. Let me do this in highlighter. So the pose with Cindy was like that. Like she kind of had her arm. She wasn't propped up on her. Had her head up basically using her abs. But she was doing that, and then one leg up, right, and the other straight down, okay? So, and I think it was for Cosmo, or something like that, and then hair, whatever. What they did, because obviously she's fairly long-legged, but they wanted to make her like freaky long-legged, right? So they did and this is early Photoshop, but you can still do it. So they cut the image there. And then so this was Frozen, right? Frozen Asian meet Frozen Cindy. Anyway, so they did that, and I guess they must have duplicated the layer or something. And then they cut it there, and they stretched her legs out that way. So, because I think actually her legs are probably like that, right? But they stretched them out so they look more like that, crazy, like freaky spider legs, very fake, right? But then that's the photo that goes in the magazine because that has this more elongated look, but it's not what she actually looked like. And frankly, I don't know the source image for this, but that looks like that, because yeah, it's possible some people will have like a crotch to knee that's about two heads. But yeah, that definitely looks wrong. I'd be curious as to what this woman looks like if you had it where she's facing forward, so it's a flat and taken from a distance. Because the other thing is lens distortion. If you're in a photography studio, the camera is she's in front of a wall, and the camera is about proportionally like here. Well, you can't see my hand, but the camera is going to be, roughly 8 feet away. My parish just is working on a parish directory, and everybody was able to go have their photo taken. And that photographer, he was only about 10, yeah, he was about 12 feet away from us. I think he might have been a little bit further away and then using a short telephoto, because sometimes that's a more flattering image, right? But he was a fair distance in terms of photography studios. A lot of them, they're really close and they use a short lens. And then that will also make the center of the image be, bigger, and then the head and the feet smaller. Not as much as a fisheye, but anyways, there's a whole thing. Like, I'm babbling and babbling. I've probably been babbling for like 10 minutes on the proportions, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. If you want super accurate, well, first of all, you're never actually going to get super accurate, because even if you take a photo and then you trace the photo, like like the camera is going to add distortion to the image in one way or another, and unless you're a photographer, you don't really necessarily realize that. Like, oh, this lens is the most natural looking, this lens is distortion in this direction or whatever. But even if you take that and trace it, if you're gridding it, you're going to fuck it up yourself. And I know this because I grid my paintings and I screw them up. In small ways versus the original. But, the other thing is you can project, but if you project, it will probably be more accurate, but you have to make sure that the projector's not even at it. If it's got like even a millimeter tipped up this way at here, by the time it hits the wall, it's a fair bit of distortion where the top's going to be stretched, or side to side or whatever. So you're never going to get 100% accurate, but you can aim for having things that look as natural as possible. What the old masters did was they used camera obscura, so that was also tracing. It had its own distortions, right? But it was a lot more accurate than drawing it by hand. So anyways, at the end of the day, they're stylistic, so there's Noah, right? Obviously, this is his head is actually kind of too big. One head, two heads. His tits are there, so that's actually most actual human men. Second head down is nipple height, but Noah's head is a little bigger. And then there, where'd I go? 1, 2. Yeah, so at that point, Noah's like a 6 head because his crotch then is at 3. But it depends on the drawing. Sometimes his head is bigger, and sometimes his head is not bigger because I don't. I muck around with it. And this one, the color's off on this because I think I was out of blue, which is why his hair looks pink instead of gray. Anyways, point is, that is that sketchbook, and boop. Hope you've enjoyed the tour and the blathering and the ranting about whether humans are 8 heads tall or 7 heads tall or whatever. It's at the end of the day, it's your stylistic choice. If you want them to look like 8 head tall pinheads, go for it. I sound like such a bitch, but it depends on, fashion. Actually, I think some fashion illustration, the head is almost more like 10 heads because they do like an oval and then the legs are down here, right? So you use the distortion however you like, but I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go grab the book I have about proportions and at least flash it. It's an old one. It's probably out of print, but you know what I mean. Hang on. I've had this book since high school. I'm sure it's out of print, but you know, you might be, who knows, maybe it's still being sold on Amazon or probably eBay for old copies. But one of the first things I flipped to, anthropomorphy. So what did I say about 7 head? Notice they're showing 7.5. They're not cutting them off at the ankles. That would be up here. That is going to the heel bone, 7.5. That looks more natural. The head, 2, 3, 4 right at the crotch, and then the legs are a little bit shorter. Now that is for man. Woman, probably hips be up here, and 3.5, and then 4. It depends on her body, right? And then they talk about the cannon and the 8-head portion. This is from Dürer. My German is terrible, but actually my German is non-existent. But showing heads based on the 8-head. Modern canon for the human body accepts the Renaissance idea that the head should be 8 times, the body should be 8 times the head, but adds minor variations. So, level of crotch. So there's that, and then also a lot of proportions on all this sort of stuff. So this is a pretty good book. It's a Spanish artist who wrote it. It has loads of line structure and practice exercises, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, I had this when I was, like I said, in high school. Back when I used to scratch everything up with markers. This is the other one I had, also from high school. So this one, I probably also out of print. It's from it, written in the early 80s. This guy, he's starting with a phase. Men's hair, step by step. They don't look like that no more. Also, it's always interesting. You look at this. This is kind of like in some ways, your classical comic book. And I mean, like superhero kind of draw. There have been discussions about changing human facial structure, actually, even in the last century, which are kind of fascinating when you go down those rabbit holes. Some of it is difference in diet. We don't eat, we tend to eat softer foods than our ancestors did. So if you always have soft foods from when you're a baby, you don't need to build this, thicker jaw and muscles. So people are starting to have more and more squishy faces over time. In the West, other parts of the world. But again, here you go. You got your 8 heads or your 7.5 heads, average height is thought of as being 7.5 heads. Race, sex, age, individual physical differences, yada, yada, yada. So, purposes of fashion, I agree. Yeah, anyways, so these are the things I bite my tongue on in certain classes. But yeah, 8 is sort of standard, sort of also complete bullshit. So that's my little rant at the finish. So I did say I would do a quick pan of the Ricky painting, so we will add that now. This video is already super, super long, so why not make it longer? Here we go. All right, I'm just going to do a quick sketch because when this is, or not sketch, run over, when this is done, we will have a full tour of this video. But Ricky is painting. Who knew he could paint? Well, actually, we still don't know if he can paint because we only see the back of his canvas. It could just be stick figures, but it's got some cheese, got that, and got a little mouse toy. There was another like bread roll there, but it looked too much like the cheese. It was confusing. So anyways, I'm hoping I have this done in a week or so. Bye, Ricky. Bye, you guys.